Hello children, today you are going to learn biology from the standard of 7. This is a bridge course for you. You will learn all the basics of biology now. So first, today you are going to learn about the plant kingdom. The plant kingdom. So we are going to discuss this plant kingdom in detail. So before going into the topic, I will give you a few introduction part, that is, for example, take a school. All these students, many age group students will come to a school. What they do they all learn in the same class? No, they will not. Each one will have their own class. According to their age, they will be put in different classes. For example, small kids will be put under LKG and UKG. Then the little ones will be in first standard, second standard, and the bigger ones will be in 12th. So from LKG to 12, they will be put in classes according to their age and needs. So now you are 7th standard. Why? Because according to your age, you have to study in 7th standard, and you will be taught the subjects according to your age. So based on your needs, the classes are put. So you have been categorized according to your age and needs. So this is the model of how a school functions. Likewise, what happens in plant kingdom also, from small organisms, from unicellular minute organisms, that is single cell organisms, they develop into huge trees. So they all come under plant kingdom, one kingdom called plant kingdom. So what we do, we cannot put them as a whole. Like if they put a LKG student and a 12th standard student, what will happen? So that type of confusion happens here also. So that is why what we do, we classify according to the characteristics, according to the appearance, according to their features, we categorize them. So this is the need for classification. That is why we classify all the organisms. So let us go into the topic now. So first, what happens? All the living things. Living things means we can include the plants, the animals, human beings, all that moves, breathes. So we call them as living things. So what they do is, all the living things are divided into 5 parts. So this classification, I told you why they classify. To categorize them according to their categories, we categorize them. We put them into different groups. So they have they have taken all the living organisms, not only plants and animals. They have taken all from microorganisms. They are taken to all from till the huge animals. So all the living things are taken under category and put them into Monera, Protista, fungi, Animalia and Plantain. So Monera means the small bacteria. Those we cannot see through our naked eye. They will be seen only through microscope. But they are very small, but they are living things. We are also living things. They are also living things, but they are very small. So what they did, they took all the bacteria, the archaebacteria, those which grow in extreme conditions, extreme cold conditions, extreme hot conditions. So these archaebacteria and cyanobacteria, the blue-green bacteria. So all these are put under Monera. Then next is Protista. So Protista is a little developed one. The fungi, like before, it is before fungi. So the Protista are the multicellular small organisms. They will have many cells, but they are micro small organisms. So that is why they are put under Protista. And the third is the fungi. Fungi is a little developed part. Comparing to these two, they will be visible. They will be a little tinier. We can see through the naked eye, but they will be very small. So fungi, and then comes the animals. So comparing to this is a big, much developed category, much developed one. So animals, all the animals, the dogs, cats, lion, tiger. So everything will be put in Animalia. They have holozoic type of nutrition. So they will depend on other animals and plants for nutrition. So they are put under one category. And finally Plantae, that is the plants. All the plants are put under one category. First is Monera. The Monera means bacteria. Protista means the multicellular organs, small organs, that is Protista. Then fungi. Then Animalia. Animalia means animals. Plants. Plantae means all the plants. So they have divided into 5 categories. Today we are going to learn only the plant kingdom alone. This part alone we are taking and seeing it in detail. In this also we have many files. So that we are going to see in detail. Now we are going to take only the plants, not about the bacteria or fungi or animals. We are going to only take about the plants. The Plantae. So that is the plant kingdom. So inside plant kingdom, so plants, we will learn as a whole, we will learn the characteristics, the 3 major characteristics of plants. So first is multicellular. So all the plants are multicellular. Multicellular means many cells. So many cells will be functioning together to form an organism, that is a plant. If you take a hibiscus plant, inside that there will be many cells, many thousands of cells. So each cell will function their own part. So that is why they are said it as multicellular, because plant is a little higher organism. It is a higher organism. So multicellular plants are taken under what? Plant kingdom. Then eukaryotes. So eukaryotes will be present only in multicellular plants. So eukaryotes is a type of cell. In that a well-defined cell organelles will be present. Each organelle will be responsible for various functions. The nucleus will control it. The mitochondria will give the power. The lysosome will produce the digestive enzyme for digestion. So each organelle will have their own function. So they are well defined. This eukaryotic cell will be present only in higher organisms, that is multicellular organisms. So eukaryotes is the second character. Next is autotrophs. So plant kingdom has autotrophs. Autotrophs are plants that they can produce their own food. Auto means they can produce their own food. How can they produce their own food? By the process of photosynthesis. So in the leaf, the chlorophyll will be present. In the presence of light, water and carbon dioxide, they will produce starch. That process is called photosynthesis. So they are autotrophs. Autotrophs. All plants are green, right? If they are green, chlorophyll is present, then they can produce their own food. They can supply nutrition for them. But for example, us, we cannot produce our food. We depend on other plants and animals for nutrition supply. So we are not autotrophs, whereas plants are autotrophs. So first is the multicellular. Plants are multicellular. Eukaryotes or well-defined organelles will be present, and finally autotrophs. They can produce their own food. So that is why they are called as autotrophs. So now we are going into, now we saw the characteristics of plants now we are going into the classification in detail. The various, like I said, from LKG to 12th standard, you have been classified, you have been categorized. Likewise, here also they have taken only plants and they have categorized according to their characteristic. How from small till a huge big tree. So first is the Halophyta. Under the classification, the first one, you take it as the lower organism. This is the lower organism, like the kids for us, the small kids. This Halophyta is taken. So under Halophyta, algae will be present. So all the algae will be present under Halophyta. So algae Simple and primitive means they do not have well complicated structure. They do not have a stem, they do not have a leaf. If a plant means we have all those things, right? If a plant means we have a stem, we have leaves, we have roots, fruits and everything. But here in algae, we do not have anything like that. It will be very simple. It will be has a mass. A bunch of plant will be present. No parts will be differentiated. So that is why they tell it is very simple. Only a group of cells are together. So and they are primitive. Primitive means old. They are very old. They have not been developed. They are not been evolved. Comparing to the trees that give fruits, they are not being evolved. They are the old, the primitive ones. But these flowering plants and those which give fruits, they are evolved. They have various parts. They are useful for humans also. So comparing to them, they are very primitively old one. That's why they tell it is very simple and primitive. And next is no vascular system is present. Vascular system means presence of xylem and phloem. So what xylem will do? It will carry the transport the water. Phloem means it will transport the nutrients. But here no vascular system, no xylem and phloem will be present. Since it is very simple, no vascular system is present. And next is present has a whole mass called thallus. So it will be as a bunch called thallus. So there the plant is called as thallus. There is no leaves or fruits or root. It will be as a bunch. It will just float on water or it will grow on moist areas. So they do not have any parts. So they are called as thallus. As a whole, they are called as thallus. First we saw what are the type of organisms comes under Halophyta and how they will be, whether they are simple or complicated. They are very simple and primitive, and there is no vascular system, there is no xylem and phloem, and finally we saw what is thallus. So these are the characteristics that comes under Halophyta. So here I have drawn a diagram. Halophytes. Halophytes is this is a Halophyte example. So this is a small plant, very small plant. It will be has a bunch. So this is an example Halophyta. Halophytes is an example for Halophyta. Next we are moving on to the other category, the Bryophyta category. In Bryophyta, it will be compared to this Halophyta. This Bryophyta would have been a little better, would have been developed a little. So we will see what are the characteristics now. So first is Bryophytes. Bryophytes. So Bryophytes means first terrestrial plant. What are they? They are the first terrestrial plant. Here they will grow only in moist places because algae grows only in moist places. But here they will grow in land. So that is why they are called as the first terrestrial plant. So first terrestrial plant means what? They are the first plants that grows on land surfaces. So bryophytes are the first terrestrial plants. Then autotrophic mode of nutrition. Here I say all the plants are autotrophs. So autotrophic mode of nutrition, that is they can produce their own food. They can supply nutrients for themselves. Using chlorophyll, photosynthesis process will take place with the help of sunlight, water and carbon dioxide. So they do not depend on other organisms for nutrition. They itself will prepare it. So that is why it is called as the autotrophic mode of nutrition. And third is the uses of bryophytes. First, they are used for medicinal purpose. So medicinal purpose means for medicines, for intake of medicines. These bryophytes are used. They will take the plant and extract the chemical and use it for medicinal purposes and ornamental purposes. So ornamental means for decorating. The flowers and plants that are is why they are used for ornamental purposes. What are the two uses? First is they are used for medicinal and ornamental purposes, that is for decorative purposes. Next is they grow only in shady and damp places. So shady means under a tree or where direct sunlight does not come. On shady place or under a tree or under a house where it is very cool and moist. In such places, these bryophytes will be growing. So that is why they tell shady. Damp means very moist place. So in very moist, very wet place and very shady where there is no sunlight. In those type of environment, this bryophytes will grow. That's why they tell shady and damp places. Next is flat thalloid body with rhizoids. So what happens here? We saw it is a whole mass, a bunch together called thallus. But here what happens? Here flat thalloid, the bunch of cells will be flat and the rhizoids will be present. It is not the root but simply it will be present for anchorage, for fixing, for upholding to the surface. What they will do, these rhizoids are used. So it has been evolved from a bunch, they have been evolved from a two flat thalloid body with rhizoids. So rhizoids have been used. But here you do not see any presence of rhizoids. So what happens? This is the evolvement from Halophyta to Bryophyta. First is they are the first terrestrial plant, that is they grow on the land, and next is autotrophic mode of nutrition, that is they can produce their own food for nutrition, and next is used for medicinal and ornamental purposes. Medicinal means for producing medicines and ornamentals means for decorative purposes, and they will grow in shady and damp places. Shady means under where this direct sunlight does not come, where shade is there. It may be under below a building or under a tree. It will be very cool. The cool wet place where there is no direct sunlight comes. In that type of places, these bryophytes will grow, and flat thalloid body with rhizoids. Flat thalloid body means it will be present as a whole but flat, and they will have small rhizoids in it. For example, moss is an example for bryophytes. So this is the structure. The plant will be present. It will be very small. It will be present in this structure. Here you can see the rhizoids, these small dots. This is the rhizoids and the body. See, the plant body itself, it is very simple. So moss is an example for bryophytes. So I have taught the first two phylums of the kingdom, plant kingdom. Now I am going to give you a small recap. You see, first all the living things, the plants, the animals, the microorganisms, all are divided into Monera, Protista, fungi, Animalia, Plantae. So this is the 5 kingdom classification. So in Monera, the bacteria is categorized. Next in Protista, all the microorganisms will be categorized. The multicellular microorganisms will be categorized. And fungi will be categorized under fungi. Then Animalia, all the animals will be categorized. And finally, plants will be put under Plantae. So we are going to concentrate only on this part alone, only the plants alone. So plant kingdom. Now we are going to see the characteristics. Now first is multicellular. They are many cell. Next is eukaryotes. They have well-developed cell organelles. And the third is the autotrophs. Autotrophs means they can produce their own food. They do not depend on other organisms. Using chlorophyll, they undergo photosynthesis with the help of plants. They are autotrophs. they will undergo photosynthesis process using chlorophyll, sunlight and water. So these are the three characteristics. And finally, we are going into the classification. First is the Halophyta, the most primitive one. First one, the lower one. So all the algae, the green part that will be present in moist places comes under Halophyta. It is very simple and primitive. It is very simple and primitive means it is very old. It is not developed, much developed. It is very simple and primitive. No vascular system, no xylem or phloem will be present. So that is why no vascular system is present. No xylem and phloem are present and present as a whole mass called thallus. They will be present as a whole, a bunch called thallus. No leaves or plants, no leaves or roots will be present. They will be present as a whole called thallus. So example, Untitled. This is the structure of Untitled. They will be with very small structures. So next we are moving on to Bryophytes. First is they are the first terrestrial plant. That is, this is the first plant that grows on land surface. Next, autotrophic mode of nutrition. That is, they can produce their own food. They do not depend on other organisms. Using chlorophyll, they undergo photosynthesis with the help of sunlight, water and carbon dioxide. Next is used for medicinal purposes, for making medicines, for extracting chemicals. These bryophytes will be used. That is why they are used for medicinal purposes and ornamental purposes. Ornamental means for decorating the house, the stages, the places. What they will do, they will use flowers and plants. So some plants in front of bryophytes have been used for ornamentals. Next is they grow in shady and damp places. They will grow under a tree or where there is shade, and the place should be very moist. It should be very damp. The water content should be a little high. It should be very wet. Only in those places bryophytes will be able to grow. And finally, the structure, flat thalloid body with rhizoids. So here we saw a bunch as whole, but here flat thalloid structure and rhizoids will be present. Small root-like hairs will be present. So those are called rhizoids. Flat thalloid body with rhizoids will be present. Bryophytes will have such structure. The body form will be like this. Example, moss. Here you can find the rhizoids and a flat structure. So this is the characteristics of bryophytes. First we saw about the thallophyte and bryophytes, and the third one is Pterodactyl. First we saw what? First is Halophyta, second is Bryophyta. This is the third heading, Pterodactyl. So now we are going to see about the Pterodactyl in detail. So comparing from Halophyta and Bryophyta, this would have been a little developed, a little evolved from the previous two classification. So we will see that. First terrestrial vascular plants. So pteridophytes are first terrestrial vascular plants. So these are the terrestrial plants. Terrestrial plants are those which grow in land, the land surface. The plants that grow in land surface are called as terrestrial plants. Next is vascular plant. So vascular means presence of xylem and phloem. If a plant has xylem and phloem in it, then it is a vascular plant. So what they tell in Pterodactyl, it has vascular plant and terrestrial. So it is the, so compare, why they tell it is the first terrestrial plant? Because in the before parts, in the before classification, they are not terrestrial and they have not had vascular, that is xylem phloem in it. But now the xylem phloem presence have been come. So that is why they tell it is the first terrestrial vascular plant. Next, the example horsetails and ferns. So these horsetails and ferns are the names of the plants. They are a type of plants. So these type of plants come under what? Pterodactyl. Horsetails and ferns come under Pterodactyl. So next is, it has medicinal values, that is medicinal purpose. Then soil binders and ornamentals. First is what? Pterodactyl have medicinal purpose. Medicinal purpose means these plants will be used for medicine, for making medicine. The tablets that we need, the medicines that are used. So for these medicinal purposes, Pterodactyl, some of the pterodo plants are used. So Pterodactyl are used for medicinal purposes. Next is soil binders. What they are? Soil binders. Pterodactyls are soil binders. What they do is they bind up the soil. They hold up the soil together to maintain the fertility. So pterodactyls are called as soil binders because they hold up the plant very tightly to the soil. That is why they are called as soil binders. First is medicinal purpose and then soil binders. Next is ornamentals. So ornamentals, pterodactyls are ornamentals, means ornamentals are plants that are used for decorating. So those we would have seen in marriage functions, the temples in our houses, we will decorate with the plants and flowers. So those plants that are used for decorating alone, they are called as ornamentals. So this pterodactyl are used for ornamentals also, that is for decorative purpose also this plant is used. So these are the uses of pterodactyl. First is medicinal purpose for making medicines, and then soil binders for holding up the soil together. Then ornamentals, that is plant is used for decorating purposes. So these are the uses of Pterodactyl. Examples, so we already saw horsetails and ferns are example for Pterodactyl. These are types of plants. In this type itself there will be many plants. So we will see one example. So horsetails example, Equisetum. Equisetum is a plant which comes under horsetail. This is the type of horsetail plant. So this Equisetum comes under Pterodactyl. Horsetail will come under Equisetum. Equisetum is an example for horsetail. So this plant Equisetum comes under Pterodactyl. Next we saw ferns. So ferns example Azolla. So this Azolla comes under Pterodactyl. Pronounce it correctly, children. Equisetum Azolla. For horsetails it is Equisetum, and for ferns example Azolla. Okay, these are some of the characteristics of Pterodactyl. So first we saw how the plant is. This is the first terrestrial plant, and we saw examples, and we saw the uses of it. Then we saw some examples. So from this Pterodactyl, the next one gets involved a little bit. Some added features would have been come. We will see what are those features. Here we saw it is the presence of vascular unit. Comparing to Halophyta and Bryophyta, here vascular is found. Now when comparing this to gymnosperms, a little changes would have gone. So we will see. First is it is evergreen. Evergreen, woody shrubs and trees. So evergreen means it will be green. It will be greenish throughout the year. There is no wilting of leaves. The leaves won't get dry. They will be greenish all over the year. That is why they are called as evergreen. Always green. Evergreen plants they will be greenish throughout the year. Next is woody shrubs. So small shrubs. The small bushes. The woody means the branches will be stronger. It will be gymnosperms and trees. So trees will be present. These are the three types of plants which comes under gymnosperms. First is evergreen. It will be greenish throughout the year, and woody shrubs. So small shrubs that are having branches that are woody, and finally trees. Trees also comes under gymnosperms. So here we did not see any trees. Did we see any trees? We saw only plants. In Halophyta, Bryophyta and Pterodactyl, we did not find any trees. But now trees is mentioned here and woody shrubs are mentioned here. It is an evolution. So from one class it is getting evolved. This is called evolution. So evergreen, woody shrubs and trees are present in gymnosperms. Next is large sporophytic plants. Large sporophytic plants. Large means we know trees. They mention it as trees. So trees are usually huge. They are very large, big trees. So they are large. Sporophytic means it has spores in it. A small substance called spores in it. It is used for reproduction. So these spores will fertilize to form a zygote. So then they form a seed to grow into a new plant. The mode of reproduction will be sporophytic. By using spores, they will reproduce. That is why they are called as sporophytic. Large sporophytic plants. That is, large means when we tell trees, they are usually large. So that's why they tell large. Sporophytic means it involves spores for reproduction. So large sporophytic plants comes under what? Gymnosperms. Okay. Next is, it is differentiated into root, stem and leaves. It is differentiated into root, stem and leaves. If you remember Halophyta and Bryophyta, what we would have learned, thalloid, the thallus. How it will be? Does it have leaves or stems? No, it does not have anything. It will be has a whole mass. A single mass of cells will be present. So they are called as thallus. That is the plant body. But here if you see means root is there, stem will be present, leaves will be present. So these three parts are present. Each one will have each function. Now it is getting developed from a mass as a whole. Now it is getting evolved as root, leaves and stem. So differentiated into root, stem and leaves. What if these parts are getting differentiated and each part will have their own function. They will function its own activities. What root will do? Root will suck the nutrients from the soil. It will take up the nutrients from the soil and give it to the plants. And what will stem do? It will make the plant to stand straight and hold up everything. What leaves will do? They will do the photosynthesis process. It will produce food for the plant through photosynthesis because chlorophyll is present. So each of the part will have its own function. But if you find in Bryophyta and Halophyta, there is no differentiation. It will be as a whole. The whole thing, mass of cells will function. So differentiated into root, stem and leaves. They are getting developed. So that is why they are getting differentiated. Next is erect, aerial and branch. Erect, aerial means they are straight. Erect means straight one. How trees will be? It will be straight. It will be erect. So it will stand straight. That is why they tell it as erect, aerial and we have branches. So it won't be a single stem. Few branches will go. So that is why they tell erect, aerial and branch. Erect and aerial means they will be straight. Then the branches will come come in the cycle. That is, they are branched. Erect, aerial and branched. So these are the characteristics of gymnosperms. So we saw examples here for Pterodactyl, we saw Inquisitor and Azolla. Likewise, here also we have two categories of plants. One are conifers and the cycades. For conifers, example, pines. So you would have seen pine trees in all the hill stations, Kodaikanal, Ooty and all. You will have a pine forest. There you can find huge trees. So those comes under gymnosperms only. So those are pines. So conifers, example, pines. Then cycades means cycas. So cycas will be, it won't be very tall. It will be in a medium level of height, and it will have branches. So it will have a very strong branch. So that is cycas. So under cycades, cycas example, conifers example, pines. So remember children, these are the two categories of gymnosperms, conifers and cycades. And conifers example, pines. For cycades example, cycas. Pines are, you would have seen pine trees. These cycas also, it will be a medium level tree with strong branch in it. So these are the examples of gymnosperms. We saw few characteristics of gymnosperms. Only in gymnosperms, the seed, first plant with the seed would have evolved. In the previous ones and all, you would not find seeds in it. But in gymnosperms, seeds will be present. So the development, the discovery of seeds would have started from gymnosperms only. Tree means we will have seeds, So gymnosperm is the starting development. It discovers the presence of seeds. So that is why in gymnosperm seeds will be present. So these are the characteristics. We saw what are the type of plants comes under gymnosperm. Then these, whether it is sporophytic, the type of reproduction they undergo and how they are differentiated. And we saw how the branch will be, that is, it is erect and aerial. And then we saw few examples. These are some of the characteristics of gymnosperms. Then the last one, the evolved one. It is the highest category in kingdom plantae. In plant kingdom, this is the highest class. We will see that next is angiosperms. What is it? Angiosperms. So these angiosperms, what difference between gymnosperms and angiosperms is, here you would not have any presence of flowers or fruits like that. But in angiosperms, you will have flowering plants, the plants that gives fruits, everything comes under angiosperms only. In gymnosperms, if you find example, pines and all, we do not have any fruits. Only the branch will be present, the seed will be produced, but no flowers and fruits are produced. But in angiosperms, the fruits that we eat, the flowers that we get, everything comes under angiosperms only. So we'll see the characteristics now. Flowering plants in which seed enclosed in it. I already told you, flowering plants. Those plants which have flowers in it, those are called angiosperms. So flowering plants are angiosperms, in that fruits will be present, and inside the fruit the seeds will be present. So we have three things in angiosperms. First is they have flowers, they are the flowering plants, and fruit will be present, and inside the fruit they have seeds in it. So in angiosperms, flowering plants in which seed enclosed in fruits. Next is terrestrial and vascular. So these angiosperms are terrestrial. Terrestrial means they will grow in land alone. There is no aquatic or marine. They does not grow in water surface. They grow only in land plant's face. So that is why they are called as terrestrial. So vascular. Vascular means what I said. Vascular means presence of xylem and phloem inside it. What xylem does? It carries water. Phloem carries food materials. So that is the function of xylem and phloem. It is the anatomy of plants. Inside the plants, the xylem and phloem will be present. So if both are present, then we tell it as vascular. Terrestrial and vascular. Vascular means presence of xylem and phloem. Terrestrial means they will be grown in land. Next is eucalyptus. Example for angiosperms. Example eucalyptus. So if you would have seen the tree eucalyptus, it comes under angiosperms. It will grow to a height of 100 meter. How many? 100 meter. Example eucalyptus. Eucalyptus comes under angiosperms. And next we will see the use of angiosperms: food, fodder, fuel and medicine. What are they? Food, fodder, fuel and medicine. So these angiosperms are used as food. So we told fruits will come. So fruits means we will take it as food. So we can include food in it. Then fodder means fodder are the plants that are used for feeding animals, the pet animals, the other domestic animals and all. We will feed the plants. So angiosperm plants will be used as fodder for feeding the animals. And next is for fuel, for burning purposes. To get heat energy, what we will do? We will put the wood together and we make fire for heat energy. So in such type, the wood where it comes from trees. So in angiosperm, this wood will be used as a fuel. So we will use wood as a fuel. So those woods are angiosperms. So food, fodder and fuel. And last is medicines. So for medicinal purpose also, these angiosperms are used for making medicines, the tablets. So this medicines, angiosperm is used. Chemicals will be extracted and they will use for making medicines. So these are the classification of plant kingdom. First we saw Halophyta and Bryophyta. Now we saw Pterodactyl, Gymnosperms and Angiosperms. So these five are the classification of plant kingdom. From a very small structure, very small plant, from unicellular plant, it gets evolved into a huge tree. You see the difference from the development from the first stage to the last stage. So this is called classification, getting evolved from one category to another. So this is the classification for plant kingdom. Now I will give you a recap on this topic. First, what we saw, Pterodactyl. It is the first terrestrial vascular plant. It is the first terrestrial vascular plant. Terrestrial means it grows only in land. Vascular means the presence of xylem and phloem. So that is why we tell it as it is the first terrestrial and vascular plant. Only in Pterodactyl this category has been come first. So that is why we tell first terrestrial. Vascular means xylem and phloem. Presence of xylem and phloem. Vascular plant. First terrestrial vascular plant. Next, hostels and ferns. These are the characteristics, the categories of Pterodactyl, hostels and ferns. So these come under Pterodactyl only. Then medicinal purpose, for medicine, for making medicine, Pterodactyl is used. Pterodactyl, the plants coming under Pterodactyl, they are used for medicinal purposes and soil binders, for binding the soil together, for holding of the soil together. This Pterodactyl Pterophyta is used. Next, ornamentals for decorating purposes, for decorating places, for decorating houses, for decorating temples, for decorating stages. We use plants, right? So, Pterophyta are the plants that are used for ornamentals. Example, under horsetails, equisetum is the example, and under ferns, azolla. Under ferns, azolla is the example. So, these are the characteristics of Pteridophyta. And next is gymnosperms. Under gymnosperms, we saw it is evergreen. It is greenish throughout the year. The leaves will be present throughout the year. There is no drying of the leaves or the plant. So, woody shrubs. Woody means so small shrubs will be present under gymnosperms. So, the branches will be not very thin or weak. It will be very strong. It will be woody. So, woody shrubs and huge trees also comes under gymnosperms. Next is large sporophytic plants. So, trees are usually large, so they tell it as large. Sporophytic means it involves spores for reproduction. So, it involves spores for reproduction. For producing seed, it involves spores and fuses together to form seeds. So, large sporophytic plants, and they are differentiated into root, stem and leaves. So, it is not as a whole mass, it is differentiated into few parts. They are root, stem and leaves. So, root will do the absorption from the soil, then stem will hold up the plant and leaves will do the photosynthesis process. So, each part has their own function. Next is it is erect, aerial and branched. It is straight, strong and branched. So, erect, aerial and branched. It is an important characteristic for gymnosperms. So, these are the characteristics in gymnosperms. Example, like here we saw horsetails and ferns. In gymnosperms, we have two categories. One is conifers and other is cycades. So, under conifers, example pines. So, we would have seen the pine trees in hill stations. So, example, under conifers it comes. So, example pines. Under cycades, cycas is the example. Cycas is a tree with woody branch. So, conifers, cycades, under conifers, pines is the example. Under cycades, cycas is the example. Then we are moving on to the angiosperms. So, in gymnosperms we have seeds but no flowers or fruit will be present. But coming to angiosperms, we have seeds, we have fruits, we have flowers also. They are the flowering plants. They are the flowering plants. It has flowers in it. So, in which seed enclosed in fruits. So, they will bear fruits also. This angiosperms will bear flowers, fruits, and inside those fruits, seeds will be present. So, that's what is said here. Flowering plants in which seed enclosed in fruits. Next is terrestrial and vascular. These plants are terrestrial. Terrestrial means they will be living only in land. It will grow only in land surface. So, terrestrial and vascular. Vascular means presence of xylem and phloem inside. The anatomy of it. So, xylem involves in carrying water, phloem involving in carrying food materials, that is the nutrients. So, those will be present in angiosperms, terrestrial and vascular. Example, eucalyptus. So, huge eucalyptus trees are example for angiosperms. So, their height will be up 100 meter. That is, it is a very large height. So, eucalyptus example 100 meters. So, next is the uses of angiosperms. They are used as food. So, we use the fruits for taking it as food. Even animals also eat the fruits as food. So, food Fodder means those that are used for feeding animals. So those are the fodder. For that purpose also, these angiosperms plants will be used. And third is the fuel. So by burning the wood, we get heat energy. We use it as fuel. For all those purposes, gymnosperm plants are used. So food, fodder and fuel. Last is medicine, for making medicines, extracting their chemicals and using to make medicines. So these all uses will come under angiosperms. What are they? Food, fodder, fuel and finally medicines for medicinal purposes. So these are the classification of plant kingdom. Learn all these spellings correctly and learn to pronounce it correctly. Your worksheet will be given through PDF. See the questions and try to answer and learn the words